Welcome to The Explainer. We're about to solve a really common and, let's be honest, super frustrating household mystery, that dreaded damp spot on the wall. So I want you to think of this as a crime scene. In the next few minutes, we're going to hunt for clues, we're going to identify the culprit, and we are going to crack this case together.
It always starts like this, right? You spot a patch of discolored plaster. Maybe the paint's starting to peel a little bit. But listen, this isn't just a stain. It's a clue. It is the first piece of evidence at a crime scene that could be costing you a lot of money and even affecting your home's health.
All right, so let's get our detective hats on. The clue hunt begins now, and I promise, by the end of this, you'll know exactly how to figure out what's really going on with that damp wall. Now, in pretty much any damp wall mystery, there are two primary suspects. So let's get a profile on each of them. Okay, our first suspect is rising damp. This guy is the infiltrator from below. I want you to imagine your brickwork acting like a giant straw, literally sucking moisture right up from the ground. That moisture then climbs or, rises up through your walls starting at the foundation. And here's suspect number 2, penetrating damp. This is the external attacker. This happens when your home's outer defenses, the brick, the stonework, have been breached. Rainwater just soaks right through a damaged spot in the wall and moves sideways, horizontally, straight into your home. Every culprit leaves a trail. And to solve this case, we have to get good at analyzing the evidence they leave behind. Okay, this is probably the single biggest clue. Just ask yourself, where is the damp spot? If it starts down low, right at the floor near the baseboards, and looks like it's climbing upwards, well, your prime suspect is almost certainly rising damp. But if that patch is kind of random, maybe halfway up the wall or near a window, then penetrating damp is probably your guy. Let's dig a little deeper into their signatures, their MOs, if you will. Think about the seasons. Rising damp, that's a year-round problem, but penetrating damp, that gets way worse right after it rains. And check out the texture. Rising damp can leave these white, salty-looking crystals as the water evaporates. Penetrating damp, on the other hand, usually just leaves dark, damp patches. See? Each culprit has a totally unique profile. So, we might have a primary suspect in mind, but in any good investigation, you need definitive proof. So, let's move from just looking at it to actually diagnosing it with a few forensic tests. Think of this as your official detective's toolkit. First, check the weather history. Super simple. If the damp spot only pops up after a big storm, that points directly to penetrating damp. Second, a moisture meter is your best friend here. If you test the wall from bottom to top and you find that the moisture levels are really high at the bottom and then get lower as you go up, that's what we call a moisture gradient. And that, my friends, is the smoking gun for rising damp. Okay, detective, you've analyzed the evidence, you've run the tests, and you've identified the culprit. Now it's time to deliver the sentence and find the right solution for the crime. But before we get into the specifics, just look at this. The financial stakes are completely different. Fixing penetrating damp is generally way, way cheaper than fixing rising damp. And this is exactly why getting that diagnosis right from the very beginning is so absolutely critical. And here are the options on the table. For rising damp, the solutions are, well, they're a lot more invasive. We're talking about things like injecting a chemical barrier deep into the wall, or even undercutting the whole thing to put in a new damp-proof course. Now, for penetrating damp, the focus is all on the exterior, fixing the mortar joints or applying a water-repellent coating. Each solution has its own pros, cons, and a very different price tag. A question that comes up all the time is, can I just do this myself? Especially that exterior coating for penetrating damp. And the source material says, yeah, it's possible. But, and this is a big but, it comes with a serious warning. If you apply it incorrectly, you can actually trap moisture inside the wall, which can make the whole problem 1,000 times worse. Sometimes calling in a professional is just the smarter, safer bet. So we've reached the end of our investigation. And now it's time for the final verdict. A crucial takeaway that you really can't afford to ignore.
And this is it. This quote from our source material really says it all. If you misdiagnose the problem and you apply the wrong solution, well, you're going to pay once for the wrong fix, and then you're going to pay a second time for the right one after the problem inevitably comes back. It is truly the most expensive mistake you can make in this situation.
So let's just quickly summarize your detective training. Remember, rising damp starts low. Penetrating damp is patchy and irregular. The timing is a huge clue. Is it worse after rain? And that vertical moisture gradient? That's your definitive proof for rising damp. But the most important rule of all, when in doubt, don't guess. Just call in an expert. So the next time you see that mysterious damp spot, you'll know what to do. You have the tools, you know the suspects, and you can read the clues. The only question left is, are you ready to really listen to what your wall is trying to tell you? Thanks for joining me on this investigation.